I think that the data suggesting that women mate across and up hierarchies is true, and that men mate across and down. That looks to me to be true. It looks like it's true cross-culturally, although it varies to some degree. And people who are unfamiliar with that idea or doubt it, you could read Buss, the psychologist, Buss, and he's a credible authority in my estimation. And so the problem then comes is that imagine there's multiple dimensions along which you might evaluate someone's attractiveness. Mm-hmm. There's personality, there's intelligence, there's athletic prowess, there's socioeconomic status, there's productive capacity, there's creativity, there's lots of dimensions. So then imagine that you're above average on 3 or 4 dimensions. Well, that makes it easier for men because they're mate across and down those hierarchies, but it makes it harder and harder for women because with each dimension they're above average on, if their fundamental desire is to find someone who's of equal or higher status, they shrink their dating.
Less people, I know.
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly right. Well, I also think, and I've seen this when I've counseled women who are intelligent, creative, and attractive and young. And that's 4 like killer attributes. Men were often so intimidated that they never got asked out.
Maybe you could also put into one of your podcasts or things, because I know a lot of young men follow you, to ask the girls out. I do say that. Okay, I don't listen to all of your stuff all the time. Give them a little extra bump.
I tell them all the time. It's like, get out there and ask. And say in my clinical practice too, it's like, you're not going to find someone unless you ask. And, for all there's a lot of criticism aimed at the, the men's movements that teach men how to be a player, how to attract women, there's a lot of negative press aimed at those. And I can understand why, because there's kind of a psychopathic element to it. But one of the things those movements do is to really encourage young men to overcome their fear of approaching women and even asking them for their phone number or for a date or for a conversation or for a coffee, and put a profile up on a dating profile, dress up nicely, get a professional photograph taken, put your best foot forward, and have enough courage to approach some women and maybe get over your fear. And it's so, but I would say to young women, if you find someone who you think fits your criteria and you're not being asked out, ask them.
Fine, I'll do it and I will report back.
Well, what's the alternative? To wait and wither on the vine? That doesn't seem very useful.
I don't want to do that. No, that sounds horrible. I didn't want to say horror, but then I did. Dang it. Okay. No, I don't want to do that. I love that. Thank you so much.
I have a question for you. And this is a stupid question, perhaps, but
no, go.
I've been very curious about apps like Tinder. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Abigail Schreier about this the other day, because there's some evidence that young people are having much less sex than they were 20 years ago. And so I've wondered with apps like Tinder, if what's happening is that a small number of men are getting a tremendous amount of sexual attention from women, and a huge number of men are getting none at all. And the guys that are attractive, say on Tinder, then have their selection. They have women who've already said yes, because that's the only people you communicate with on Tinder, if I understand it correctly. And so they have all these women at their disposal, essentially, and then almost no incentive, unless they're mature, to have a committed relationship. And so that puts the women in a terrible bind too, because the men that they find attractive are uncatchable in some sense, because the competition level is too high. And I have no idea if that's true, if that's actually something that is happening.
I feel like it's partially true. I feel like there's that level to it, exactly what you just said. But then there's also a psychological element that I think we aren't discussing, which is that men aren't necessarily attracted to prey that walks up to them and lays down dead. The hunting is gone. So I feel like a lot of times men can swipe and know, I can hook up with this girl tonight.
Well, maybe that's another conundrum. It's like, so, and I'm too old to be involved in any of this, so I don't understand it anymore. But if Tinder, for example, facilitates hookups, what happens if you go on a Tinder date and you're female and you say no? Like, are you out of the pool then? Are you no longer? So are you pushed constantly for instant sexual favors, let's say?
Tinder is hookup central. That's what you're going on Tinder for. Hinge is more looking for a relationship, maybe more.
Okay, so they're sorting themselves out, the apps.
They're sorting, but there's levels to it for sure, where there are certain apps that, yeah, if you're not going to hook up with them, you don't meet up with them. That's what that's for. This is our instant sex app. And then
I just can't see that being, I don't think that's in anybody's good interest. But I particularly think it's not in the good interest of young women. I also don't think it's in the good interest of young men, because I think it teaches them to be psychopathic predators fundamentally. No, I mean that. I don't see there's any way out of this, because if you repeatedly practice taking sexual intimacy out of the broader context, that's what you're practicing. Well, how is that not? It's shallow, because it's shallow by definition, because it's only the pursuit of hedonistic pleasure decontextualized. You don't know the person, you don't know their story, you're not involved in an ongoing adventure, you're not contributing to one another's lives, you're not dependent on each other. There's no relationship there. So
it's just a quick hit. Yep.
It's a quick contextless hit. Well, so then what is it? So then is it, if you practice interacting with women, but also with men, if you're a woman, as if they're a source of instant context-free gratification, how are you not training yourself to treat human beings as if they're nothing but instant sources of context-free gratification?